Rural America. We're the flyover region. The voters who get blamed for electing the conservative movement controlling Washington, D.C. at the moment. And the people who are often seen as less than, lacking in sophistication, and leaning way too far to the right. But what if that's not all we are, those of us who live in the middle of the country? What if, at least in Minnesota, rural America is dynamic, engaged, and doing work that would astonish the coastal elite? According to Ben Schierer, who joined me along with Anna Wasescha from the West Central Initiative, rural America, or their corner of it, has much more going on than anyone gives it credit for.
I've often said, yes, we're getting more polarized, but you know what? At the local level, we still have the ability to build relationships that can withstand those tensions, and that we have the space, the trust built that we can ask and have these messy, difficult conversations. And you know what? Our country's always been like that. There's always been tensions, and we're always striving towards something that's better than where we are now. I mean, that's one common theme throughout our history. And we've been very imperfect in the past, but we're always striving. You know, that's the ideal of America. It's not the here and now, it's the ideal of what we can be. And I truly believe that that's in our local communities. And so, yeah, I'm optimistic.
Welcome to Brave Middle Ground, where curiosity meets courage. I'm Dayna Del Val, and here we're exploring the spaces between isolation and connection, division and unity. We'll reclaim the middle ground one brave step at a time, starting right now. Anna and Ben, welcome to Brave Middle Ground. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having us today. This is going to be fun.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I think it's going to be fun, too. I have not done a lot of conversations where there have been three of us. It's always a little bit of a tricky dance. We'll just do the best we can and trust that communication and conversation flows freely when people are having really interesting things to talk about. So let's jump right in and start. Anna, I'm going to ask you this question, and then Ben, I'll ask it of you as well. You can use whatever vantage point or lens you want to, but how do you define middle ground?
Oh, that's a really interesting idea. Okay, so I have an academic background. I think you do too. And so I think about it as thesis, antithesis, synthesis, right? So like, you know, yeah, there's stuff on either side. How can we pull it together? And that's critical thinking. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Critical thinking. I feel like that's a phrase that's kind of gone out of fashion. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about that as well. Ben, how about for you?
Yeah, so this is really interesting. I learn so much from Anna every day, and I'm learning already. I would say critical, along with critical thinking, how about critical doing, right? So I have a background in public, I was the mayor of Fergus Falls, and I see the common ground as the place where you get things done, right? You have people who have super strong feelings on this side and super strong feelings on this side, and that common ground is is the place where you do that critical doing.
Wow, so interesting. Let me say thanks for your service. I think public service at the local level is so vitally important, and it is so difficult. I say that not as someone who's done it, but someone who always sort of expected that I would. And it just feels like local legislating has gone completely off the deep end, Ben. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, and it's well, I'll tell you what, so I spent 16 of the last 20 years in elected office at the local level, and it's the most rewarding thing that I've ever done, with the exception of being a husband and a father, of course. But at the same time, the last 2 years especially, but the last 6 years have been incredibly difficult because people are thinking less about actually getting things done that mean something for their community, and more about, you know, making a statement that means something for them or the people that are, you know, in their tribe, which is just something that is so different than it was not that long ago.
Yeah, that's the sense that I get too. I was lucky in my previous job to get to spend time with the city councils and city commissions in Fargo, Moorhead, and West Fargo, and really in those 15 years saw that evolution go from exactly what you're talking about, people looking to figure out what would serve our community, and shifting to, I have an agenda and I will not budge. Speaking of middle ground.
Yeah.
So that's actually sort of a great transition to move into the work of West Central Initiative, which is an organization I did not know that much about. So, Anna, maybe just bring us all up to speed. And can you contextualize this organization in terms of are there organizations like this across the country, or are you a singular sort of unicorn?
Well, I think of us a little bit as a unicorn, but to answer the first question, or one of the, you just gave me a whole bunch of questions. Answer one of those.
Sorry.
Questions. Okay. There are 6 initiative foundations in greater Minnesota. Minnesota has 87 counties. All 6 of us collectively cover 80 of those 87. The other 7 are the Twin Cities. There is nothing like that in any other state in the United States of America. So in that regard, we're quite unusual. We are all independent, the 6 of us, but we meet all the time and, exchange ideas and do things together that we couldn't do individually. We were created by McKnight, by the McKnight Foundation, which is McKnight was one of the first presidents of the 3M company, and he amassed quite a lot of wealth, and they have done incredible things with that wealth through their foundation. In the 1980s, those of us who live here in the Upper Plains remember the farm crisis. And in the northern tier of Minnesota, it was mining and timber. But for us, it was the farms, and people were going bankrupt and losing the family farm. McKnight did a year or so of listening sessions in greater Minnesota, and rather than just create a grants program that people could apply for, they said, this is quite remarkable. I'm astounded by their foresight. They created these 6 foundations because they said, we don't know these regions the way you would, and we can't be as effective as you could be, and so we're going to support your work as a foundation, for quite a long time. They still support us, so this is 40 years hence, and and we've done tremendous. We've lived up to the idea they had that we might be more effective, I think, in awakening a spirit of philanthropy in rural Minnesota. And could I just add, yesterday, Farm Aid, the concert, it was announced that there would be, for the first time, one here in Minnesota. It's their 40th anniversary.
Okay.
Next year's our 40th anniversary. So McKnight created us, in response, as they created that whole concert series every year. And so we're all going to be going down there and celebrating and launching our 40th anniversary by going to the Farm Aid concert. And
me and Anna and Willie.
Yeah.
Me and Anna and Willie.
Well, you got to get there quick.
Yeah,
because sooner or later, poor Willie will depart, and I would think it might be sooner than later. So that's incredible.
Yeah, he's 92 years old, by the way.
Isn't that incredible? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Talk about a testament to loving what you do and just doing it your entire life.
Yeah, I know.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah. But, I think it's also really important that, 40 years ago, there were a lot of pressures on the loans that farmers took. That's what happened, and then they were going bankrupt. Fast forward to today, there's going to be a lot of pressures on farms, with tariffs and international trade, for example, high cost of entry, the soaring cost of farmland. There are a lot of challenges. So things have changed. So those things that are stressors are maybe different, but the stress in rural communities continues. So, we're going to keep up the good work. I think that's part of why we were founded, was to respond to that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also the problem of global warming, which is absolutely going to affect agriculture, as it already is.
Yeah.
Okay, so no surprise that Minnesota is leading the way in this sort of work as well. For anybody listening outside of the Great Plains, Minnesota is, I joke, so I live 11 blocks from Minnesota. So I say I feel like Moses. I can see the land of milk and honey, but I just can't quite get there. It is extraordinary. The state's support for the arts, for culture, for rural citizens and rural agendas, the foundations that live inside that state, the political engagement in the state. You can go on and on and on about the amazing things that Minnesota is doing that nobody else seems to be catching on to. So it's not shocking to me that you are the state that West Central Initiative lives in, because of course that's how it's working out. And just another thing for me to look at from my 11 block vantage point.
Well,
Good old Minnesota exceptionalism, right?
right, and you're
There
always
it is.
welcome. Always
Yes,
welcome.
thank you.
And
There
this
are
would be
many days I think I might pack up and head that direction.
not that. I mean, it's walkable, right?
Yes, it
That's
is.
perfect. That's kind of a segue into Ben's book, because when you ask yourself, like, how did we get to be so exceptional? I mean, it's partially
Yeah.
on the shoulders of people who were real statespeople.
Yeah.
And he's just written a book about Rudy Perpich, one of the most remarkable statespeople that Minnesota has ever had lead it.
Ben, tell us about the book, because as I said to you before we started recording, anytime somebody puts in the labor, the research, and the just sweat equity to write a book, it's incredibly impressive. So tell us about the book.
Yeah, you bet. I'll keep it quick, short, because I love talking about Rudy Perpich. But here's the book. Rudy, it's called Perpich, a Minnesota original, published by the Minnesota Historical Society Press. Came out on April 22nd. Yeah, it's labor of love. I'm really proud of it, to be honest. But I'll tell you what, it all started, like a lot of things in my professional life, it started with a conversation with Anna Wasescha. And I had just visited with this group, it's a true story, just visited with this group of mayors who came to Bemidji. I got a call from the mayor of Bemidji. She said, please come to Bemidji. There's a group of mayors from the metro area who are going to come to Bemidji. They want to talk about the rural-urban divide and how we can work across this. And so there was no policy. There was no partisanship. It was just people getting together to build relationships. And as I saw that room, I recognized, first of all, the opportunity I had as mayor of Fergus Falls to work on something that was important, but also the history. I started to think about the history because I love history. And the history that Minnesota has of bridging those rural-urban divides, partisan, geographic, these divides to come together to truly do what's best for our state. Anyway, that led me, of course, I did what I always do. I called Anna and said, Anna, I've got some ideas I want to talk to you about. Anna said, well, you need to reach out to Lori Sturdivant and read her stuff. So Lori Sturdivant, one of Minnesota's foremost historians, get a relationship with her. Anyway, came to this... I wrote a proposal for a book about Minnesota history and how we've overcome those divides. And she said, the outline for the book looks great, but you're missing one story, and that's the story of Rudy Perpich. And so the more I learned about Rudy Perpich as I started to read, the more I realized I want to write a book entirely about Rudy Perpich and what he meant to Minnesota. And it's I can sum it up like this. It's a story of wins and losses. It's a story of Gorbachev visits and the Mall of America and chopstick factories and the World Trade Center and the Center for Victims of Torture. But it's ultimately a story of a kid born to immigrant parents from the Iron Range of Minnesota who grew up in poverty without running water, who didn't speak English when he entered kindergarten, who grew up to be the governor of the state of Minnesota. And I argue in the book, one of the most consequential governors that we've ever had. And he did it by bridging divides across regional, across geography, across partisanship. He built relationships. He truly built on that foundation of the Minnesota exceptionalism that we're talking about here. And that's my really short answer.
That's fantastic. I feel like you've been talking about this a lot, that you were able to synthesize it so quickly. What I really know about Rudy Perpich is just the Perpich Center for the Arts and school, all of those pieces, which are so consequential to someone like me who has spent my entire life in the arts. That school opened my junior year of high school. I had two classmates who were the first graduating class from that school. So, I've known about it a long time.
Just want to jump in there. Yes, thanks for mentioning that, because last week we lost Lola Perpich at 94 years old. Lola just passed away, and Lola was Rudy's wife. And really, you can't tell the story of Perpich without talking about Rudy and Lola. They were a pair, they were a force. And she was the driving force behind the Perpich Art School. And there's a great story in the book about how that came to be and how she just had that vision. And that's one of the legacies that his education legacy is around that Perpich Art School. So great story.
Fantastic. I can't wait to read the book. I love history, and I really love regional history. So that'll be a treat. Okay, I want to Before we jump into some specific things that West Central Initiative does, I really want to look at your mission, vision, and values, because you both know this, and some of my audience knows this, that I was in the nonprofit sector for 13 years. And so there's kind of this ongoing conversation around mission and vision and values. And are we living up to our mission? Or is there mission creep? What are our values? Are they evolving and keeping pace with the way society is moving? And when you're on the North Dakota side, and I think many, many places side, you have this little bit of conservatism so that you don't offend any potential donors. So you try to make it say something, but nothing too strong, because you don't want someone to read it the wrong way. So I just want to read a little bit of your mission, vision, and values, because I'm so struck by them. Okay. You say, our mission, vision, and values help to define our organization, culture, and guide our work. The mission is serving to improve West Central Minnesota through funding, programs, and technical assistance. Okay, that's pretty benign. Vision, a vibrant, inclusive, and sustainable world starts here in West Central Minnesota. Okay, that's starting to get a little edgy. Values, we seek to embody our values in all that we do. Neighborliness, generosity, empowerment, and trend testing. And there's this whole idea of really looking at the rural part of Minnesota, specifically your part of Minnesota, as being this, I think, kind of utopian place for everybody to come and find their place inside it, which I don't think is actually the way most people think about rural America. I think most people see it as being extremely conservative, extremely unwilling to evolve, not inclusive, and not really concerned with sustainability. So talk about the fact that you're clearly doing something different, and that's clearly not true in your little corner of the world.
That's a very big, landscape of questions. So let me address maybe one of the most interesting pieces of it, which is, how can you talk about climate in rural spaces? Because climate itself has been politicized, and what do you mean by sustainable? And what is all this? And yesterday we were in a conversation. Our staff members visit almost all of our 82 towns in all of the 9 counties every year. And yesterday, one of the staff was describing a city council meeting where the people who came in to hear about a proposal to put solar panels on the roof of a municipal building appeared as though they would be like the kind of people who would say, "Are you kidding me? I don't believe this at all." And in fact, it turned out, appearances can be deceiving. It turned out they were like the most vocal, like, of course we're going to do this. And rural and agricultural, right? And it hit me. One of the first things I experienced when I became president of West Central Initiative was I had a board chair. His name is Dan Ellison. He's the guy who coined the term the bachelor farmers of Herman, Minnesota.
Yes.
Yeah. And I said, I don't really understand how the harvesting of corn works. Can I see how that goes, right? So he said, sure. So I go out to his farm outside of Herman, Minnesota, 2,000 acres. He and his brother farm it. And then they bring in a guy when they're harvesting. But 2 people, 2,000 acres. I'm in this machine. I didn't want to leave. I mean, he thought, I thought you were going to be.
They're incredible, aren't they?
It's amazing. This, incredible, rainfall. I mean, I don't know what Niagara Falls of golden corn flying off the back. And I don't understand how that can happen by being, pulled underneath this tractor. It's a miracle. And inside the cab of the tractor are 7, 8, 9, 10 little iPads telling him everything, absolutely everything. And I thought, we have this image of people, I don't know, maybe on old John Deere tractors rolling through, being like, I've done this for 100 years. I don't need any new anything. And I was thinking about my own grandfather, who my mother used to say, man, when they introduced automobiles, he was the first one there. It's like he adopted every possible labor-saving, time-saving, more efficient mechanism that he could get, because that was really hard farming. It was like farming with horses, right? And that's so we have to like kind of, I think, challenge these stereotypes of people in rural areas not being interested in change or in new technology, or being believers that the climate is changing because they see it every day in their work. So I think that's the way we do this, is that it's one thing to say by administrative fiat, sort of, well, everybody understands the climate is changing. But it's another one to actually know people who literally every day are processing that and doing something about it. And that's what we're working. I mean, I'd say there's a movement where we live. Wouldn't you say, Ben? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that, well, I'd say this. We talked earlier about the changes in local government over the last 6 to 8 years, right? And local government is not the only place that has changed over the last, like our world has changed a lot, right? And I think one thing to me that's more obvious than ever is leadership matters. In this moment right now, leadership matters. And I think, so I look at West Central Initiative, that, you're pointing out that there's some things on there that you might not typically see or expect from a community foundation. I think Anna's stepped into that role and said, no, this is what we stand for. This is what the values that this organization stands for, and this is what we're going to lead with. And we're not, and if that offends somebody, well, then that offends somebody. But this is the work that we think is important, and we're going to do it. And I think that's more important than ever right now. And I think that people appreciate that, and people expect that actually right now more so than any time in my adult life. People want to know where it is exactly that you stand in these times. Mm-hmm. You don't have to agree with that. You don't have to agree with them on every single thing, but they want to know where you stand. They don't want squishy middle vanilla fits everything. That's just not where we're at in the world right now.
So in these polarized times, how do you navigate then with being an organization that has taken a stand? How are you navigating the other side so that you are serving as many people across your 7 or 9 counties as you possibly can? Because, I mean, it's just a fact that for every liberal person, there's a conservative person. For every person who votes one way, there's the person who votes the other way, who feels strongly pro and against on every issue. How do you navigate that?
Well, can I say, I'll just give one example. So putting, like the example that Anna mentioned, putting solar panels on the roof of a public building, a liquor store, city hall, a community center, that saves taxpayer dollars, that works for liberals and conservatives and everybody. And so if you're against that, then you're against something that's beyond like what we're actually talking about. You're against something that is in your mind, not actually. I think. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, you have a different agenda.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think that's it's a practical, what's it called, the rational man theory, right? The rational person, if they could spend $100 on a loaf of bread or $1 on a loaf of bread, and they're the same loaves of bread, the rational man is going to say, I'll take that $1 loaf of bread. And so, so some of these projects, like the rooftop solar in municipal buildings, that's we're appealing to the rational man, and we still have a lot of rational people in our world.
And I'll tell you what, the people that want to pay the $100 for the loaf of bread, they are out there in our region. That's fine, and we're going to have to just accept that and then move on, and just like talk to the people that want to buy the $1 loaf of bread.
Wow. Whew. I like how definitive that feels. That you're really not making the effort to be all things for all people, because nothing, you're right, Ben, nothing gets accomplished when you sort of become a yes person to everybody, or you're afraid to take any action that somebody might be offended by. Somebody's going to be offended by everything. So you have to move forward with the best of intentions. So, Ben, you are the Director of Civic Partnerships, and underneath that position, you run a program called Rural Democracy. Talk about that program, because I think this is a huge growing issue across the country. Certainly, I had heard of it in North Dakota long before I ever knew anything about the work that's happening at West Central Initiative.
Yeah, so I think along similar lines of the loaf of bread example. So in our region, the 9 counties and the portion of the White Earth Nation that we serve, there's the 9 counties. There's also 82 cities, and there's 35 school districts and 235 township boards, and there's soil and water. Anyway, there's 410 units of government within those 9 counties. So that takes a lot of people, right? Like that's so the underlying drive behind the Rural Democracy Project is we need good people to run our governments, to make sure that our towns and our water work. So it's not, unfortunately, I think democracy has become a polarizing word. I mean, let's think about it. Like, as we celebrate the 250th year of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, democracy, again, if democracy is something that we can't agree on, that is a good thing for our communities, then again, we'll let those people have that. So anyway, the Rural Democracy Project that we're working on is just very, very, very rooted in local nonpartisan government. We want to help train people to run for local office. We also want to support those people who are currently in local office. We want to reach out and hopefully engage historically underserved and underrepresented people within our region to make sure that they are participating, have a voice, have the information they need. And then lastly, just a broad general engagement. We just wrapped up a series of 6 events around the region to talk about the importance of local journalism and the challenges that local journalism faces right now. And so we partnered with local libraries and editors, publishers, journalists of the local papers to watch a film. We gathered, there's 50 people in Alexandria that watched a film and then gathered in a room at the local library and talked about what it meant to their community. Like that, there's something about that just felt really right in this moment. So we're trying to engage people on all kinds of different levels, but it's rooted in the values that we can do things together that we can't do alone. That our communities are stronger, when we work together, and that when good people run for local office, we're strong. So.
Yeah, and another part of that, Dayna, is the idea that there's more to being a responsible citizen than voting. It's really, really important to vote, but there's more to that, and there's more to knowing who it is that represents you, right? So, there's so many dimensions to citizenship, and we want to give everyone things to think about. And ways that they can get involved that involve civic virtue, civic literacy, civic duty, civic participation. It goes on and on and on. We're lifting that up and shining a light on it and saying this is one of the most critical things we can focus on right now.
So I was struck. In Minnesota, you say on average 1 in 21 individuals needs to serve in an elected position, but in rural Minnesota, it's as little as 1 in 8 or 1 in 7. I mean, that's one family. Somebody needs to serve on some board. I don't know that you have answers to this, but like the nonprofit sector, I think needing a pretty serious reboot in a lot of ways. It's functioning kind of like it functioned, 100 years ago, and to me, it doesn't feel like it's functioning all that well often. Is our civic state functioning well? I don't mean Minnesota, but just the state of our civic elected bodies. Are they functioning the way they should be? Do we need to really take a bigger, further view and rethink all this, maybe? Or is it really as simple, I put in quotation marks, as engaging individuals to step up and play this role inside their communities?
Let me just jump into that, and you can jump in as well, Ben. So first of all, Minnesota exceptionalism. Last year, at the end of the legislative session, they agreed, the legislators in Minnesota, that it would be a requirement that students in high school have a course in civics in order to graduate. It's like you got to have 2 courses in math and 1 in lab science, 1 in civics.
Yeah.
First of all, what that recognizes is it was at our great peril that we stopped requiring that students know about civics. So the question you're asking is like, well, what's the health? Is there a good pulse on the body politic here? And no, there isn't a good pulse. And one of the issues about here's another kind of polarization thing, which is local politics, the political systems, like the soil and water district, and national. And there's been a blurring of the lines so that everything is national. And that has a lot to do, I think, with the decline in small newspapers and local coverage of news issues.
Me too.
Yeah. So we need to, resurrect the vitality and, build the vitality of the local political system, because it stacks. And if it's stacking on a very weak foundation, that's not good, right?
Yeah.
The foundation should be the strongest. That's the whole point of representative government. That's the point of the House of Representatives. So that bottom level, which is us, that's where we got to do the work. Yeah, Ben, what do you think?
No, I think you're right. I think that just generally, even outside of straight political activity, just people don't join groups. People don't join the Kiwanis and the Rotary Club like they used to. So I think it's different. One thing we heard last week when we had the event is at our local paper, there's more 20-year-olds. There are more people in their 20s who are subscribed to the local paper than there are people in their 30s or there are people in their 40s. And so I think that my hope is that we've gotten to a point where people recognize that this is not the world that we want to live in. This is like this isolation and this distance and like these fighting each other behind keyboards. It's not who we are at our best, and it's not who we want to be. And I think that young people are going to, I'm an optimist. I have faith that the young people are going to step up and meet the moment.
Great. I love that. Let's all jump on Ben's bandwagon, because I think it feels pretty bleak in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. Let's move on to this inclusion piece, because this, like all of these issues, if you take it as a single issue, isolated event, I think you can say, well, we don't want illegal immigrants here. Let's just make that great big bold statement. Okay, well that is probably true. I mean, I can't speak to that fully, but inclusion, particularly as it relates to people who don't necessarily look like us, people who didn't grow up here, has these enormous ripple effects, which as soon as we stop being welcoming communities, as soon as we stop allowing space and place for people to come, drives up prices of all sorts of groceries, leaves these huge gaps in the workforce, limits our ability to have this global perspective, all these things. How are you dealing with inclusion as a vision for your work?
Well, I mean, we come at it from all kinds of different directions. So specifically, we work with the national program called Welcoming America, and many of our other Initiative Foundation sisters and brothers do as well. And like Back to School Days, that hosts a bunch of events that are created by communities themselves in the first couple of weeks in September to celebrate the plus side of a pluralistic democracy, which is what we want and what I think has brought us. I mean, that's how America, I think, became number one economically in the world. It's like we're the melting pot, and the gene pools, like hybridization. You look at a good field of very beautiful corn. I mean, that's hybrid corn. It comes from all kinds of different gene pools, and that's how we got what feeds the world. So, so we work on that piece. On another level, you can make an economic argument. I think that's what you were making, and it's almost impossible to defeat that argument. I mean, that's going to be a real issue. And so, I mean, I think generally speaking, here's another piece of it. When you think about being happy and belonging, a huge amount of that comes from a feeling of joy and something that's ineffable, really, about, for example, music. and art and dance and fabric patterns and amazing food, because it's not just like meatloaf and mashed potatoes. It's like that cacophony of experience, of life's experiences, is what makes life worth living in a way. And so for us to be able to help in every way we can, to say, like, wow, this makes me happy, and together we can be happy in a community, because we care about what makes life worth living for all of us, not just for any one of us, but for all of us. So, I don't know. It's a hard one, right? And honestly, I mean, you could say, well, we're still living with the scars of slavery, because we're much more upset about immigrants from the global South who are brown and black than we ever were about the people who were coming over from Norway,
Right.
or Poland or Germany or whatever. And we can say that, but I mean, I think there's a lot there, but there's also moving toward the light, right? And moving toward the light is, well, it's a more perfect union. Like we're trying to make this better, and we see that this diversity, this pluralism makes it better, as we believe in democracy makes it better. Yeah.
Ben, you talked about there being inside these 9 counties also tribal land. What's the role of tribal government and tribal systems and education and oral tradition and all of that? How does that play into some of this work? Because Anna, the same way you talk about we're still recovering from slavery, we're clearly still recovering, and I don't necessarily mean the 3 of us, but culturally we are recovering from what happened to Native people and is continuing to happen. How does that factor into the really important work you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and it's not an easy one. And I think that the first thing that I would say is that we're trying to do our best to show up and to listen, and to not show up and tell people things, just to show up and listen in communities. And that's not exclusive to tribal communities, but I mean, to specifically to your question, we have a friend of both Anna and I's. He serves on the board. His name is Jacob MacArthur. He's on the board of West Central Initiative, and he was the director of economic development for the White Earth Nation, and he now works at the Vadine Center at the University of Minnesota Crookston, and he has a lot of deep relationships and partnerships in those communities. And so we're just trying to do what we can to listen and to understand how we can help, and how we can learn, really, to tell you the truth. And I think it's not something that's easy. It's not something, all these things, I'm telling you, I'm a firm believer that some of the trajectory that if we're off, it's taken decades to get. I mean, clearly in the instance that you're talking about, it's taken centuries and generations, but even in some of the things as far as like civic participation, and it's taken decades, and it's not going to be turned around immediately. I think we're in this for the long haul. We're there to listen, to show up, to learn, and take it slow.
Yeah, I mean, think about, just to confirm that, we've talked about the environment and the effects of global warming. We've talked about the trauma to tribalism, to tribal lands and people, agriculture. I mean, all of these things none of them are quick right turns and suddenly they're fixed. They might have dismantled fairly quickly, but they certainly can't be remantled in any sort of speed. Oh, and then civic evolution and de-evolution as well. So I'm really curious to know from both of you, those are 4 huge issues, but my sense is that you don't wake up every day and think, oh, time to go back to this hopeless work. So what's the work that makes it joyful, that brings you optimism?
Ben?
Well, last night I was in Cyrus, Minnesota at the city council meeting, and I was telling Anna, I was there for a short period of time, and there were 12 people in the room, and it's Cyrus is a town of 308 people, and in that room, within 15 minutes of these 12 people, I saw so many different stories, and I saw so much. There was this, there was the young new property owner who came and just wanted to raise chickens because the price of groceries, he was going to raise chickens, and he was working with some of the older people in the community to get that variance for his chickens. And then sitting next to me was this young Hispanic couple with an 8-month-old child who was new to the community, and they were there because they wanted to put a carport on the new house that they bought. And there was so much that was right in that room. There was so much that was challenging. There was so much that could be done. There was so much. There was just everything was in that room that night. And it's like, these are the communities that we serve. These are the people. And all of the issues I think that we've talked about here today were kind of in that room in some way, one way or another. And how do we have these strong communities? And I don't know, that drives me. Like I see the beauty of the rural places that we live in, that we choose to live in each of these communities. And so I just that's what drives me in this work.
That's fantastic. How about for you, Anna?
Yeah, I mean, it's, that was a public meeting. So part of the intro to civics is, there are, you can go to your city council meeting and you can sign up to talk, and, there's rules for how you can do it. But so like for me, it's like the public stuff, right? The public libraries, the public schools. I worked in a public college for a long time. I have been coming to Pahrump, Minnesota since I was a baby, and it has changed dramatically. But one of the things that's exemplified, there are more jobs in Pahrump. There are 3,500 people on the population sign, but there are more jobs than that there because of the businesses that have sprung up. But there's another element of what's gone on there, which is people in Pahrump have really invested in Pahrump, and they have together raised money for things like a community center, which is I love. It's a fantastic place. There's a golf course. There are lots and lots of parks. There's a baseball field. There's a new high school. There's a critical access hospital. There are lots of, every one of these small towns has they've got turtle races. So there are lots of like things that they do. And so what is that about in terms of belonging? It's like there are the multiple ways that somebody who's from the outside, and we're all from the outside in the beginning, can look in and say, I see people like me, and I think that means there's a place there for me, and I'm going to test that out. So at my age and my level of fitness, I see people in the swimming pool at Pahrump Area Community Center who look like me. There's a place there for me, and I swim there. And I think that's like just human, I mean, you're on your bike and you ride by a park and you see, just pick up basketball. I could do that. There's a place for me. And so I think that's, it was for a very long time the idea of, and for Rudy Perpich did this, jobs, jobs, jobs. Well, yes, you have got to have a roof over your head and you got to have food on the table. But there's more to life than that. And that is what we find and what our government has created, which is public spaces for all of us. And those I love them. And boy, in small communities, you really feel it. And you see it.
Yeah, it's true. I think, Ben, what you said about you saw all the good and all the maybe challenges in one space with 12 people. I mean, that is community. It's messy. The best community is messy because I don't care how homogenous you are, we still come from different belief backgrounds and from different childhoods and from different levels of access to this, that, and the other, and all of these things. So none of it's easy, even when it's easy. And America has really never been easy. Yeah. It's the beautiful thing about us is that if you just look at it from sort of a picture book perspective, the Statue of Liberty does welcome in everybody. That's not actually true, but the mentality is that you can come here and you can find a place and you can thrive and live happily and become a vital and important piece of the fabric of this country, which it doesn't really feel like that's being talked about much anywhere. I mean, I can't remember the last time I had a positive feeling about sort of the state of this country. It feels very dark, very like we are careening to the edge of a cliff, very dystopian. How do you keep, this is a little bit of a follow-up, but how do you keep the forward momentum going when it's so easy to get caught up in the polarization, the wars, the climate, all the things that aren't working that we just hear endlessly about?
Well, I would just go real quick and follow up on, those 12 people in the room. Yes, it's challenging. Yes, it's messy. But if you take those 12 individual people that I talked about and you put them in separate rooms or on the internet or in their own homes, it's not only messy, it's impossible. It doesn't happen, right? So to get them together, that's the key. And that's what you can do at the local level, right? Like I really truly believe my experience being the mayor of Fergus Falls for 8 years is I've often said, yes, we're getting more polarized, but you know what? At the local level, we still have the ability to build relationships that can withstand those tensions and can that we have the space, the trust built that we can ask and have these messy, difficult conversations. And you know what? Our country's always been like that. There's always been tensions, and we're always striving towards something that's better than where we are now. I mean, that's one common theme throughout our history. And we've been very imperfect in the past, but we're always striving. It's the ideal of America. It's not the here and now. It's the ideal of what we can be. And I truly believe that that's in our local communities. And so, yeah, I'm optimistic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing like a little adversity to focus your attention, Yeah. And I have to say, my mom, who's long gone, but she was a nurse, and she used to say to me, listen, gravity is really important because if you didn't have gravity, you wouldn't have any muscle strength. You don't even see it, but it's strength. It keeps you alive, right? And in a way, we've been in an airless and weightless frame for quite a while. I mean, the United States is a great place to live, right? And now there's a lot of adversity, and I think it'll strengthen us, and that can be a good thing, just like gravity, the gravity of the moment. I could extend that metaphor mercilessly, but I do, because it's the weight, it's everything. But I think it's good for us too. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're probably right. We don't stop and figure out how to solve things that work. We stop and figure out how to solve the things that feel broken.
Yeah.
Why in the world, Anna, and I don't expect you to have an answer, so just tell me what your thoughts are. Why in the world have no other states picked up this idea of these core organizations that have deeper roots in these, various areas? That feels like such a smart, no-brainer idea.
I know. Well, Minnesota's incredible.
Minnesota, I know.
In Indiana, there's, I think it was the Lilly Foundation. It was a very important, big foundation like McKnight. They created a community foundation in each county. And what I've heard is that was really not a good idea, because now you pit each county against another county. It's just...
It feels like too many.
Yeah, it's too many, right?
Yeah.
So another really brilliant thing McKnight did is create regions. And then, I've asked them, we just did this almanac, like why 6 regions? Why not just one for greater Minnesota? Why not northern tier, timber and mining, and everybody else has got row crops? Why not that? And there is something, they perceived it, that there is something actually very different about, for example, the driftless area along the Mississippi River in the southeastern part of the state. It's very different from where we are. Yeah, so I think they maybe just intuited it, but yeah, it was very smart.
Yeah, it just feels like such a smart bureaucracy. I don't say that very often because I feel like layers just create more complication. But, as someone who had awareness of McKnight and some engagement with them, it's always easier to go to your regional person than to your state person. It's the same reason, Ben, you have conversations with Fergus Falls constituents who are never going to have conversations with Senator Tina Smith because they can get to you. It's much harder to get to her, as an example. So it makes us so much sense to have these kind of go-betweens between this massive foundation and the work. It goes back to the very beginning question of really middle ground being where you do the work. If you're the middle of the sandwich, that's where the real substance is.
Well, and the beauty too is that each of the 6 initiative foundations in Minnesota do their own thing. Like we met with the Initiative Foundation from Little Falls yesterday, Ann and I did, and their work is similar, but it's definitely not the same as ours. And so there's each one takes on its own identity based on the region and the people they serve and the leadership of the time. So yeah, it's a really interesting model.
What's your favorite thing about the work you do?
It's got to be the people. I'm a big fan of local governments and the people in local governments and the people, how much they love their community. And just seeing the people who have who show up and who give their time to make the communities better. And if you think about that, I mean, that's to me like one of the foundations that makes our country great, right? We're thinking about our community. We're not thinking about ourselves, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, the people are amazing. I think another thing that Ben and I and my colleagues at West Central have in common is we're puzzlers. We're trying to solve these puzzles, and that trend testing thing is not a joke, right? We got to try some stuff because there aren't any easy answers to any of this, and we could go down the road and find out this was the wrong path to take. But if we don't have the courage to do that, we won't ever solve some of these kind of really serious problems.
I'm struck as I'm listening to you talk that, I mean, all of America was pretty much agrarian when it began as Europeans came and settled it. But I'm really struck by the idea that actually it's the rural routine and calendar and rhythm that is actually the way we all live. There's longevity to it. You think about the legacy of a multi-generational family farm, or you think about the seasons of spring planting, summer growing, fall harvesting, winter taking break and rest and restoring. And that's actually who we are as a country. We're not the fast-paced, get here, get there, slam it in, slam it out. We're in it for the long haul. It's the more perfect union of this kind of slightly slower paced, long game that I think really embodies the rural parts of this country. I love that quote of the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. How are we thinking ahead? And to me, rural America is always thinking ahead because it's so tied to generations behind and generations ahead. So I feel like this conversation, and my goodness sakes, to most of the world, Fargo, North Dakota is extremely rural. So I understand that most people think of my life as being rural, despite the fact that we're the urban center of this tiny little part of the world. But I am struck with such a much different regard for the rural agenda, for lack of a better word, or the rural mindset after this conversation, and just the hopefulness that is perhaps slowly simmering in this quieter way than the major cities or either one of the coasts, and that we are actually the substance. We are the middle ground of America as well.
Yeah. And the luckiest people in the world. Thank you for bringing up this. I mean, I think the kind of the corollary or the larger image that you're talking about is nature. And
yeah.
And I really appreciate being close to nature. And I think people are further and further and further away from it. On the 90th story of a building where there's just nothing but cacophony below from traffic and sirens and concrete jungle and all that stuff, that's tough. We are really lucky. And Fargo, for those, maybe you have listeners who don't know what Fargo looks like, what I love about Fargo is how incredibly flat it is, and that always reminds me it's the bottom of an inland sea a long time ago. Lake Agassiz.
Yes, millions of years ago, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only one other place on the planet that's as flat for as wide a valley, and it's someplace in Ukraine. So we are truly... There's this long-standing joke that Fargo's not the edge of the world, but you can see it from here, and that is not really much of a joke because it is flat as a pancake.
Yeah.
If you put water down on the ground, it's not running left or right. It's just going straight down.
I know. I mean, I was not a kid growing up in Fargo, but I always thought, boy, this would be a great place to learn to ride a bicycle, right? Because you don't have to deal with pumping your bike up a hill and going down and braking and all that stuff. Yeah, it'd be wonderful.
There's a reason real marathoners love to come to the Fargo Marathon, and it's because it's a much easier run because you are not climbing or receding off of any hills. Yeah, it's a funny part of the world, but you have really helped me have a new appreciation for things, and I hope that the takeaway from this conversation for everyone listening is exactly what mine is. I think it's really easy to dismiss rural America, to sort of think of them as being too religious, too narrow-minded, not as educated or as sophisticated as other people, certainly being in this flyover region, which I obviously live in too. But that's not actually accurate. Like, no stereotypes are actually accurate. There's a grain of truth to all of them, but there's so much more complexity to these small communities, to these small pockets of the country than we are given credit for. And I just appreciate the work that you're doing and the way that you helped articulate that today. So thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us today, Dayna. It was lovely. It was fun, as we had both thought.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
It's been a real joy.
Thank you. And Ben, I look forward to reading your book. Where can we get it?
Anywhere books are sold. However, please support your local bookstore. So
absolutely.
If you can't get it at your local bookstore, the Minnesota Historical Society Press. Also, you can get it there as well. You can get it at the big boxes too, but just support that local bookstore.
Absolutely. The only way that small communities survive, well, really the only way any community survives, is by people investing in the people who own the businesses in those communities. So I'll put links to Ben's book and the Minnesota Historical Press in the show notes. Everyone, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dayna.
Thanks for joining me on Brave Middle Ground. I hope today's conversation inspired you to embrace the power of the in-between and take steps toward deeper connection and understanding. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. Your support grows our community and keeps these meaningful conversations going. For more information on Brave Middle Ground and everything else I'm working on, go to daynadelval.com. Brave Middle Ground is mixed by Sound Advice, and our music is by Quinn Del Val. Until next time, I'm Dayna Del Val. Stay curious, stay courageous, and stay connected.